Hi everyone, welcome to the new tutorial. This one's going to be all about fists and how to draw the fist. I have done a full tutorial on how to draw the hand as well, so if you want to go back and look at that, that'll explain how to draw everything to do with hands in general. But I thought it'd be a really good idea to go in depth in how to draw a fist. There's so much involved in it, it can be pretty technical, and there are some things you probably just don't think of, which I hope I can highlight for you. Plus, fists are probably one of my favorite things to draw, so I'm really going to enjoy this one. I've done a lot of fists over the years because I like to draw a lot of angry, powerful kind of stuff. But anyway, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is like the finger curl, how each finger is going to fold differently. So let's just say you've got a fist drawn up like this, but it's not quite right. And that's because all of these fingers are too straight. So if you look at each of these, they're literally parallel to each other, and that's not what we want. And this is probably a common mistake that's made a lot, so I'm going to show you the proper way that we should do this. Okay, so if you have a look over here, you'll see I've got this really nice swooping motion that goes right down there, and this one over here is literally too straight. So if you have a look, the knuckles and the joints are nearly parallel, and that's not what we want. So we want to actually curl them around. So think of a nice swooping motion, and there's your knuckles there, and then there's your joints, giving that nice curling motion downwards, and they're like kind of swoop in. Think of them like this, like that little pinky finger is going to tuck, is going to tuck under everything else. So we'll give that one a big X and this one a nice tick. If I just zoom in a bit more and start cleaning this up, you can even emphasize the folds in these fingers by adding a little bit more thicker shading there, where it might lift up a little bit more and taper it out a little bit. That's how I would do it. So I'll just start cleaning this up a little bit more. Let's do some line work on it. And don't worry, we're going to get into everything else here soon, all these joints and the way that the thumb comes out there and things like that. So there we go. Do you see how each of these fingers kind of lift up each other? Like each digit is folding over the next, instead of this one where it's very parallel and they're almost the same. So you need to think about when you clench your fist. It actually starts where this part of your palm here on this side, not this one. So this one here, if you have a look, as you clench your fingers, your pinky, so this one and this one tend to fall down lower because there's more space there. The other two here, the reason that they're pointing up this way a little bit more is because this part of your palm is a lot chunkier. So if you clench your fist, you'll see they kind of hit and stop on this one here. They stop on that massive bit of muscle, that bit of meat that comes up there. But there's more space down here, so these two kind of tend to drop lower, and it gives you that nice swooping motion. So you need to kind of keep that in mind whenever you're doing a fist, and plus it just gives a lot of variation and it makes the fist look more interesting as well. Another thing I want to talk about is just how I do like the skin bulges and things like that. What I mean is these parts here. Rather than just going flat and having literally just a tube for a finger that folds and goes down the other way, well, instead of doing that, I like to make sure that I have a bit of a bulge. So I usually go out and then down into the knuckle, and then I'll have the knuckle bulge out and then tuck under, kind of like that. And this adds stylization to the fingers. It just makes things look more interesting. So if you had a fist overall that was in this kind of style and it was just dead straight and the knuckles and all that, it just kind of comes across a little too stiff and lifeless. So if you add a nice divot in the end, I'll explain what that is as well in a minute. But if you have that, it really adds a lot more interesting parts to your fist. So let's clean this up a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about this as we go. So one thing I want to also talk about while we're on this fist is you know, there's this side knuckle which we don't really talk about too much. And if you have a look at your fist now, you can kind of see just on the back of the thumb if you have a clenched fist, that's actually about there. There's like a nice divot, so it pops out about there, and then you can think of that as a knuckle. So I'll circle it, and then you can add a few sharp edges around that if you like. So have it kind of come in, down, a little bit of a dent, not too much, you don't want to go too drastic, and then swoop out with your thumb like that. And then what you want to do is have that bit of skin come up. This is just the side of the hand there, so kind of like that, and then we'll just swoop right into that first knuckle. Now when it comes to knuckles as well, you're going to want to square these ones off. So you square that off there and then drop it in. You can even draw these in if you like. So think of the knuckles as kind of creeping into the fingers like this, and they're coming in, and I'll try and make them look semi 3D so that you can see. If I shade the sides, you can see how they kind of work. There we go. I've tried to contour them a little bit just so you can see that they do have sides and they're kind of more 3D-ish. So where these shaded parts are, you can add a little, you don't want to go too far, but just add a couple of little nicks there. If you literally shaded that like that and did it full black, it's just too much. But yeah, you don't want to go too much. You just want to have a few little details to resemble. That's where a knuckle starts to pop up a little bit. Now when you're doing knuckles, think of them as like, think of the edges. So you'll go down for that. This one's kind of like more of a triangle, but it's not going to be pointy. You want to have it more like still squared off, but a more pointy square. So just a shorter version of a squared off one. And the other two are the same. They're just kind of like, you know, round them off. You don't have to go completely harsh like this. Try and just think of some nice edges around these knuckles. And the middle knuckle is always the highest, so that's going to come out. And you see with my ink work, I'm trying to think about parts folding over. So you see how this is folding over, and then that can drop down. I'm getting thinner as I go here because I don't want this to turn into completely thick line work all the way around. The only place I'm having thick line work is on the outside to hold the whole fist together. So you can see here I'm going to go up into that knuckle. That's the tallest knuckle, is the middle one. And then we're going to drop down and go into that nice thin line work there again, into that nice detail. And then again I'm folding out some skin from behind there, and then come up, little bit of an edge, drop down again. Now when I come to the skin on these fingers, like I said here, I really want to add a bit of that in there. And the reason for this kind of bump is if you think about a finger, and then you'll put the skin over the top. So let's just say that that's your knuckle, you got all the cartilage and everything underneath that, and then when you get to the skin, if this is curling over, right, you're going to think of the finger actually bulging. So like all this flesh, all the meat and the muscle that is around it, you're going to have this nice little bulge come up here. So it'll stop there, and you're going to have this bit of a bulge, especially if you're going to have a fist, and then down. And the reason that is, so there's your knuckle that'll come in, but you got to think about all the stuff that's going on under here. It's really getting squeezed in, all this skin that's getting squeezed into this gap here, and then it's going to push all this meat up, all this like fleshy stuff. If you do it yourself, you can kind of even see a little bit that your fingers do that. But basically I like to exaggerate it to make it look more interesting, a much more interesting fist. And then again, if this finger, let's just say that it goes completely straight, if the finger was actually you know, straightened out completely this way, so then you wouldn't have that bulge, it would go back down. Okay, so that's kind of what you got to think about when doing fingers, and when they're curling and getting clenched, you're really going to have that bit of flesh pop out that way. So let's roll with that, and we're going to have a nice big chunk of heavy inking there, and then I like to go thin when I'm working on a fist there. So there's that bulge I was just talking about, and I always like to go thinner as it gets to the top half of the finger. And so down here I go much thicker because it's kind of reaching into shading where it kind of helps with that fold. It'll help resemble that nice fold as the finger goes and folds over the other one. And then when I get to that knuckle, I might go a little thinner and then thick again when I get into the darker areas where there might be any darkness. So same with this one. So a little thicker and then thin. And then as you go up here even, you can add a nice little dimple here with thickness, if you like. That's a nice little trick. So nice little dimple there. And that can just, if you have a look at your own fist, you'll see that kind of little gap in there. And when we get to the thumb, always keep in mind that it usually, when it folds over like this, and it tucks and it folds in that way, it's going to cover about these two first fingers. Okay, so these knuckles, it's going to really tuck in and rest against them. So if you ever need to know how far, it'll go about even 1.5, I would probably say, but it is tucking over this one as well. Don't ever go as far as this way, otherwise your thumb's going to look extra long. It's usually always, I'd say 1.5 fingers across that way. Don't be afraid to add in some knuckles. So you see here I've just added that full divot like around the bend. So if you're doing a finger, don't be afraid to really whack in a bit of a curve to resemble a knuckle, and then do the finger. And that's a really good way to kind of continue that on. It might make you feel a little bit more comfortable about doing fists if you... That's one thing that I always got confused about when I started off was, you know, how am I going to do a finger when it's bending, and like, do I do it like this and just a tiny little detail for a knuckle? I didn't really like that at the start. That's how I used to do it. If I kept doing a fist like this and just literally have nothing there. So I usually like to probably, now, just to add that extra detail, I always like to kind of add in a little bit of a knuckle that might curve around. So you can add just like a little circle, kind of comes around like this. And I find that to be just a little bit more interesting. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Notice with the thumbnail as well, I know it's only simple, but look at those curves there. That's because the contouring of the thumb is going in this kind of perspective here, like this. Okay, so that's why we've got that nice curve in there. Just got to keep little things like that in mind as you're going. And you can see I'm just adding some nice light details in the knuckle there. And then we'll curl this around. This is where it gets kind of tricky, this kind of area here. This is what I used to struggle with as well when I first started off years ago. So the best thing you can do is just first think about the side of this finger. So this finger here, oops, and then bring that in. So bring it in, and then what I've done is I'm just kind of thinking about a bit of a tuck there. This is probably where the knuckle could finish right here. But basically what you want to do is have like some skin kind of swooping up. You want it to swoop up and pull around. So as your fingers clench, let's start with, like I've done the other side, sorry, of this finger. Now think about some of the wrinkles underneath the hand that come out here. And then you're going to have just a couple of tiny ones like that reach out from under. And then just keep going, have a couple more, go a little thicker. And then what you want to do is have some of the skin from the thumb reach up and just kind of swoop up a little bit like that. And then just, that's about it really. Just some nice little wrinkle details. You don't want to go overboard. But basically, because this thumb and this knuckle, when you clench a fist, that usually pushes down. And when that pushes down, the skin here is also getting pulled. So that's why we're getting that skin to pull up and back around that way, because this knuckle's really pulling down so that this thumb, because this thumb is forcefully clenching and tucking into that knuckle right here. Okay, so it's really hanging on. You got to think of it like that thumb is really hanging on to those fingers whenever you clench a fist. So that's why these parts of the skin are really getting pulled around that way. Plus, you've got that finger curling over and down, which is putting some pressure in here, and you're just getting that fold of skin from the under part of the skin. So yeah, and this really does give another good example of that swooping motion of the fingers really getting curled down and folding it over each one by one. You see they're all getting folded over each other. So yeah, keep in mind that nice motion of that tuck there as the little pinky and those fingers really tuck down in there. Now let's talk about the basics. I'm going to set up a fist for you, but we're going to do it really basic. I like to start off with just some really simple kind of shapes. So let's do like we're going to do like a front-on shot of a fist, and literally just think of the shape. So let's just say that's the wrist coming down there, all the way down. Now there are two ways to kind of go about this. You can either set up a silhouette shape of a fist just by judging it roughly, something like that, and then you've got like a rough idea of the fist, and then you'll go ahead and start to draw, you know, all the little bits in the middle until you start to see what you're trying to get. Now that's one way to do it. You see how I'm just trying to start to draw simple shapes? This is kind of how I do it now. See, and then I'll do all the little bumps and things like that, and start to refine as I go. So that's one way you can do it, is literally just start off as, like I said, like a little bit of a shape, and then into your wrist, like that. Okay, that's one way you can do it. But if you want to break it down a little bit, how about we start off with like some simple shapes like squares. So let's just do a square for the back of the hand. Let's just say, I've already shown you the kind of hand we're aiming for, this kind of fist, right? So do a square for the back, all right? And then we're going to start starting to shape it. So you think about that big part where the thumb comes out, and then it's got that knuckle, that edge knuckle, right? So let's try and think of that palm first. So do a bit of a shape like this. I'll just get rid of that bit there. And then we'll just start to shape the other palm in. The other palm's going to come up more like this. Let's think about the actual back of the hand. You know, the big wall that you might think, that big flat plane of the hand, the main section. We're going to think of that. And I'm starting to break it up into sections just so you can see how it works. Let's just say that the fingers all come out of these ports here, okay? What if I fill it in for you a little bit so we can see these different sections, how they work on the hand. So you might see that section kind of like that. So once you've got that kind of set up, you think of the way these are broken up. So you've got that big palm there, and it kind of goes like this kind of shape, doesn't it? It's like almost like a pear shape that kind of goes up and then up like that, okay? Think of it like a pear shape. Only on this side, it's probably a little more flatter, that side. So here, you got that nice little curve that comes up, and then you got that nice flat kind of plane down the side, all right? And then what I want you to think about is this purple part here. Think of that as, that's the fold where you're going to have a nice crease here as these fingers start to curl over. So we're going to think of that nice bulge coming out. So when you're starting to refine things more, think of that as like a bit of a bulge coming out. So you'll go out and then in there like that, and then out again. You see how that kind of goes like that and then like that? You can do that a little bit more subtle though, like that maybe. And you can sweep up and under like that. So think of that coming up. So when that palm comes under, think of it like that, and it can meet with the other one kind of like this, like a little, you know, a little crease like that as it gets to the other one. And then you'll have these, you know, you might have a few wrinkles like this that come in and then down into the wrist like this. And then you have those little tendons that come there. So as we get up to this palm bit, let's have that nice and that big meaty bit there. It's quite strengthy. Let's go up here and put a bit of a crease in it that way. So I'm going to show you the contouring in this. I'll do the contouring once we're done, so I can show you. But you want to have that the thumb breaks into two pieces. So we want that thumb to come up like that, and it's going to curl about here. All right. So we can have that kind of curl out about there. All right, and then up, and have that knuckle of the thumb kind of go over like that. All right. So let me just fade that back a little bit more. I want to start to kind of bring this in a little bit. So like I said, we're going to go up here. So curl up. You go out, little bit of a crease where there's going to be like a skin fold that curls around there. Now we can start to go into the knuckles. So if you're going to do the knuckles, let's start to just do a couple of circles, alright? Start super simple and super rough. Never go in, you know, gung-ho and start to do your refining straight away. Always rough everything out. Now what I want you to keep in mind is these fingers are all going to move in different ways. So let me just fade that back more, because we're really going to be able to need to see what's going on here. So let's just say we've got a finger coming out here. You can let's treat them like little cylinders that come out. First I might put that little wave in where I want my knuckles to go. So they're going to go up. Remember that swoop I told you? As they come down and they clench down into this part here, so the little pinky is going to be clenched. So let's do that swoop. Now let's draw each of these fingers as little cylinders. So the first one can come out like this. I'll just draw it as a cylinder first so that you can see which way it goes. See that contouring there? Alright, and then the next one, it'll just drop. It'll just drop straight down like this for the next cylinder. Okay, something like that. And then the next one's going to tuck right under. You can kind of see the way that contouring goes will give you an idea. So now the next knuckle. So you got to treat them all separately. We're going to aim this one up a little bit more. So the way that's going to go up about there, all right? And then that's where that finger's going to stop, because it's you know, that swooping thing, and then drop it straight down. All right, and then curl that contouring down again, and then really tuck it under. All right, and then we're going to go even higher now. So this one is going to pass the knuckle, because this finger's going really high. So there's our little circle for where that finger can go, about there. And then I'll drop it down again. Now the contouring is going to start to go a little more horizontal now, because it's, you know, changing so much. And then the top one will completely hide that knuckle. So if I just, you're going to see it a lot clearer once I start to clean this up, and you're going to understand and see what I mean. But yeah, I just really wanted to show you. And now that contouring is nearly going the other way now for that finger, because yeah, it's just going up so high. And then you got that thumb there that's going to come in and really, like I said, I'm trying to add a little bit of motion into these fingers here, but like I said, with this contouring, see that's the way the thumb can kind of go there. Then as you get to when it breaks down here, that joint, the contouring can go about that way, and then it's a drastic change here. So that meaty bit there that comes all the way down over here and down, you see that? We can have that, remember how it comes out the bottom here and straight up, and we'll even do that palm bit as well, like that. But look at this contouring here. So it's going to go around that way, and then as it comes around and lower, the contouring will slowly creep down to the opposite way there, like that. So let's refine this up a little bit more so you can really see what's going on. Now let's focus on these, like as I'm cleaning it up, I want to focus on these fingers that are really changing in such a different way. So remember how I really like to add a little bump there? So let's just say that's the last knuckle that you can see right there, and the finger is coming down. So I'll add a bit of a knuckle on the end like I like to. So knuckle there, might even go a little bit higher, so like that. And then that knuckle can really tuck in under. And then that other finger is really, really reaching up above. So let's just have it nice and high, reaching up. You can't even see the back knuckle because this is showing over the top from this view. And then I'm really swooping down. So now I might even start with the knuckles just so I know they're placed properly. So let's just do them like that. One there, drop down, and one there. So that's sometimes a good little trick you can do. So looking at that swoop, and I'm just aiming for where these knuckles might go, just so they're nice, they're placed nicely. And then the line work's all about, you know, a little bit of finesse in there, so nice and thin to thick. So really have that thick, and think about that finger tucking with a bit of a bulge. So really tuck that in. I'll draw the knuckle like that, and you see that line weight. Look at that, nice and thick, and then thin up here where the light might show more. But as it gets into shadow, I'm going to thicken that out. Really play up on that a lot. Sometimes you can exaggerate it quite a bit. And under here especially, where it's pretty much going to be pitch black under those fingers, let's just add a lot of solid shading in. Now we're going to start to need to have that bump in the palm really press up and tuck right into there, like as if it's pushing against the fingers almost. So really exaggerate some of that stuff and really play up on it. So really have that in, and then you can even put that fold in there, nice little fold. And let's just get those fingers tucked up. I can even fill that completely in black. And same with that one. And you see here how I'm aiming upwards toward where that finger might go. Even though we've got this thumb going over, always think about the stuff that continues underneath. Sometimes if you want to, you don't have to fully connect. Like super light little sketchy lines like that sometimes can work really nicely. Now get that thumb knuckle in where it folds right over. So I might even go thin, like super thin, and then thick over here, just for a bit of, you know, variation in those inks. And then get some nice swooping motions over there, and then that knuckle. So really like get a nice edge on that knuckle there, and then really curve up the bottom of that palm. Nice little curve straight up. There we go. And then super thin now, where the little fine details will come in. I'm going to go nice and thin all around here. You see, as it stops here, I kind of want to keep this all thick around the outside just to contain and hold the character together. Might could even have a little skin fold there. There we go. And yeah, like I said, just keep going nice and thin as you get into this palm. And I might have put a little thicker crease just about there, but I really want to make sure that all the inside details stay quite thin. We don't want to go too crazy with it. And then I can, yeah, finish this thumb off here, really curl that up, and keep that nice and thin as it goes up. Maybe even crease that, like a little skin fold there maybe, and a couple of little, just to show the contouring in my lines. Maybe I'll put a couple of little creases there just to show the way that curves out. I'm considering darkening this out completely. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I probably would. But if you don't want to, you can even do some cross-hatching kind of lines like this, and then thin them out like that, and that looks quite nice also. So that's another good idea. And then as here, up here, we'll just start to put a few more little crease lines in, thin out. Maybe I'll do a little tendon line there. Now as I get up here, I'm going to start to simplify the way this looks. So really bulge out that skin, even put a bit more like that, bit of thought into the muscles, and like I said before, a nice bulge in the skin, and then down, see that? See how it comes up to like a point, and then we'll have that bulge down like that. I like doing that kind of stuff. Then we might even put another little skin dimple fold there like I mentioned before. So again, I might go up and then down like that. And what we'll do with this bottom finger here, this one that really tucks up under, I might actually have a skin fold overlap that. So I want to do that and then have the finger pop out from under that, I think. And that'll look quite cool. And the rest now is all about just trying to put those finer details in. I might even hide that sketch now. So maybe I'll just do a couple of little finer little details here and there. Especially under there, another one of those. And now I can hide that contouring and stuff like that. And there's our fist. So maybe I'll put like a little thumbnail in here. Do a nice little deeper crease that goes up and then folds over like that. And yeah, there you go. So you can kind of see how thinking about each of those little digits separately can really just, it's a game changer. Thinking about, you know, fingers like this coming over as a cylinder like that, do a little cylinder shape, and then you've got to think about that perspective too. You see that perspective that's going into it? Think about that, and then also just start to add that contouring that goes around. So the way that the shape of this finger, it's more like a rounded cylinder. That's the contouring. So really shaping that. and then making sure you get another one that goes down the total opposite way. So if I started to remove that, which won't be seen, and then think about, you know, going the opposite way like this, and then shape it that way. So that's the kind of stuff we really need to think in mind. And even just put a little swoop or an oval in here for the knuckle. Really just throw that in there until you're happy with where the knuckle might be. And that's just the kind of stuff we need to keep in mind. So again, you can see the perspective of each finger that I've put in like that. Alright, even as we get up to here, the perspective's changed on that finger, and it's going like that way. Every finger has its own perspective. That one's going more like that way. You see that perspective? Even the thumb is pointing down this way, but it still has a bit of perspective going like that. So the vanishing point would be like, you know, the vanishing point would be more like there. Okay, just for that thumb alone. That's the kind of stuff that I'm keeping in mind every time I do a single joint. So if you spend the time to really focus on a fist, and each little digit and each joint and fold in the finger, so that part of the finger, that part of the finger, if you really pay attention and focus on every single little finger that folds, you're going to get a really good hand on that you can do. And this is just something that you'll get used to. And I know it takes time. Sometimes it kind of sucks to really sit there and focus on it. But when you're done, you're going to feel so good, and you're going to be really proud of yourself that you spent the time to get into a fist and do all those little details. And like I said, you can do it that way, or you can do it like start off as a simple shape and start quickly sketching it in. Now this is mostly from memory, so that's what you call like muscle memory, or whatever you want to call it, where I've done that many hands where I can kind of do more guesswork, which can be more accurate sometimes and quicker. So just by roughing out those. And I think I started with like this kind of thing here, and then I quickly sketched in where I think the knuckles and the fingers might start to bend and fold. So yeah, you can do it that way, or you can do it a lot more accurately if you sit there and think about all the anatomy. Focusing on knuckles now. When drawing knuckles like this, like lay out a hand, very similar to this, nice and easy. And then draw your knuckles in as circles to start with. Like really make sure they're nice and simple. So just lay them out as nice simple little ovals like this, and then you'll be okay. And then what I like to do is let's fade that back now as it is a little bit, and I'll go over the top again. We'll just get a darker blue so I can see what I'm doing. But now that I've got that, let's think of these knuckles as going up. So only draw, like at this specific angle, only draw like that part of the oval. You can even put a bit of an edge to it if you like. So it doesn't have to be super harsh though. But think of that, alright, and it tucks down. So I'm not drawing that part of the oval. We're not going to draw it all, obviously, just the top part. This is a simpler way to kind of think about knuckles. So I'm only drawing that top little part there. Now that I've got those top edges, let's have those go into the fingers. So let's just say I've got one there, and roughly just draw these fingers in. So I'm going to have them really come right down and tuck. You see I've got that swoop. I need to think about that swoop where the little pinky's going to start tucking right under the finger there. But as I go up, I like to lightly touch it onto the end of that knuckle there. So lightly touch, just touch it. So here's connected a bit too much, so I'm going to fade that off just a bit. There we go, thinking about them knuckles now, and the folds in the fingers, and then you can start to refine them as you go, if you were to clean them up a little bit more. So yeah. So let's just say I'm going to draw the fist from a front angle, directly the front. We need to think about where these knuckles are going to be placed. So we're obviously going to have the first one here, so I might just put the second one in there on either side. But like I said before, just slap them in. So we're going to get the big one there, and then the last one. Now what I want you to keep in mind is that, like I said before, this middle finger is the biggest knuckle. So it's like the tallest. It'll usually pop up a little bit higher than the other two, especially when you have a fully clenched fist. And that's how you get a really strong looking fist, is if you start to angle this one up, and I'll put a nice little divot on the end of it. Now see how it's also a little pointier. Like I said before, it's not a perfect flat square. The other two might be more longer on top, okay, like that. The other three, I should say, they're a little longer on top, but this one, it's shorter, probably only that short, whereas the other ones can be much wider. You can see that kind of difference there in length. And I might even just smooth out this last one, so I'll have it smooth out into like a flat little detail and then hook down. So sometimes you can just do that. And now that I have my knuckles placed in, that's probably the first thing you can do. Now that I have the knuckles in, I can start to actually lay out the fingers themselves. And obviously the fingers are going to go off like that on either side of these circles. So you won't have a finger start there. You're always going to have it on the sides of the circles. So if you have your circle here, which is your knuckle, the finger's going to come out from that. So that's just another thing to also keep in mind. And that's where your finger will come out from the knuckle. So now I'm playing with a bit of perspective here as well. You can probably see it. So the fist itself is going to be like literally coming directly at us. So I want this fist to kind of really come right at us towards our face, as if it's going to punch us in the face. So I'm going to start to think about these like that perspective, also adding slightly some foreshortening. So I like to do that little bulge, like I said, in each bit of the skin coming down. Now I think I'm going to have these fingers kind of semi-folding over each other as they go this way. Okay, so they're kind of really tucking down, but this one here is nearly going to be straight because of the perspective. So coming down, and then I'll have a little bit of a divot where the knuckle's going to go. Because we want to have that nice swoop down, as if the fingers are really swooping down. Now you're not really going to see it too much at this angle, but when I'm drawing these knuckles, this is where it comes in. So I'm drawing a knuckle there, and now the other knuckles are more tucked under now because it's really swooping down. So this last little pinky, you're not even going to really see that knuckle. Let's really have that one disappear under. So that's really tucked right under now. And then I can start to really draw in the, let's draw in a little bit of a, that thumbnail there. And then you might just see the palm just tuck under there, and I'll shade it black. Now there we go. So now that I've got some motion in my fist here, I'm going to fade that back, and we're going to just refine that, and this will be the last one, I reckon. So again, I want to like really, wherever it's going to get dark, I'm going to put in some thicker lines and then angle that up. Now this is the stylistic choice again. I'm going to go with a really, really sharp corner right there where that pinky starts to bend around. So really nice. And then as it gets into this knuckle, I might thicken it up a little bit more, so it's nice variety. And then make that nice and bold. And then we're going to put some nice little finer lines in as that knuckle tucks right over the skin. You see how it's tucking over like that? So I really want that to tuck over, and because the finger is now getting clenched and pulled that way, so I really want this skin to kind of look like it's reaching down a little bit more, getting stretched. You can even add a couple of little sketchy lines like that if you want to, for some finer details in that knuckle. Alright, let's start to refine this some more, put some style into it. Bolder, stronger, wider. I'm putting a little bit more edge into this knuckle, into this whole fist I mean. And see how wide that knuckle is on this side as well. I really want that to be like that. So again, I want to have that kind of swoop in and divot, and then the skin can come out from this big main digit finger. So out to a nice edge, and then in quite thick, I think, there. So, and then as I get up here, I might put a bit of a dimple, or something about there. Now I want to start to add some more details in that knuckle. Now we can start to think about these fingers folding over the next. And then I want to make sure that this thumb's kind of pressing up against, almost overlapping the top finger in a little way. And then make sure I get that palm in underneath. Just a little hint of that palm will really top it off. Of that palm, I mean that continues out this way. It's supposed to continue out that way, and the thumb comes off that. So that's that part that continues there. That's the part I'm talking about there. Now I'm just going to start putting in some really thin little details. Let's do that. Thinking about these knuckles now. And like I said, I really want to kind of resemble that swoop that comes down, and then the little pinky, you'll barely see that at all, so it kind of tucks right under like that, and there you go. So that's how I would probably do a nice fist coming directly at us. And again, just one more time, if I was going to do the contouring, so you can see the contouring on this finger here especially, just so you can understand. So that's coming towards us a little more. This one's starting to go lower, but it's still got that nice curvature to it. Alright, this one here is starting to go down. You won't see as much of a curve, and this one here is probably nearly flat. So you can see the curves are much different there as they go down, because that finger is more tucked right down with that fold. Okay, so that's the kind of contouring I'm thinking about there as I'm doing this. Alright everyone, that's it for this tutorial, all done. I'm pretty sure I covered enough on fists, but yeah, like I said, a lot of it is really to do with the motion in the fists, like that curl and the way the fingers curl and they tuck in, and they're all at different levels. You see how that's all different kind of, you know, it's just not like a perfect fist like this. When you got a really clenched fist, it really curls down and inward. So I really wanted to highlight that. And I feel like we got there, so that's good. And the way each digit kind of folds and tucks under, how to do it all separately, so that's good. And the knuckles and things like that, definitely perspective, depending on the way you've placed your character, things like that. So I hope that I've covered enough in this video. Yeah, I feel like that's it. Thank you so much everyone, and I'll leave it there, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.